So, if you have been coding for a while, or even if you have just started, you will have run into errors. You probably in the past couple videos, or just in the when watching the intro to JavaScript specifically, you probably have run into some errors with like, oh, I forgot a semicolon somewhere. Actually, you probably won't have run into that, but like you have a comma in the wrong place, or you have some syntax errors because JavaScript is a really it's not forgiving on syntax quite often, unlike HTML. CSS also isn't very forgiving either. But if you make a mistake in HTML, it'll render it to the best of its ability. So you probably would have run into some syntax errors. You probably may have run into type errors, like something is undefined. There are several different types of errors, and you'll run into them. So the I've talked about error handling in the past. I have the whole video on error handling from when I was analyzing Codecademy's version. If I remember correctly, it's about try catch and how that works. It's just a little explicit. I'd rather, and I'd have to do that with every single function. I'd rather have a function return an object that I could handle and I am forced to handle in order to retrieve the actual information. So this is where like different languages have appeared, and I'll get into that in a second. Well, let's actually read through this. So if you see a problem, if you see some red, they say red is a beautiful color. Basically, there's probably some sort of syntax error, or there's some issue in your code that it believes that you are making, right? And that's what a linter is good for. Not a linter. Sorry, oh gosh, I forget what it's called. But in Visual Studio Code, if you're typing JavaScript and you see red somewhere, something's underlined, you're like, okay, there is an issue with this. If I run this, it likely won't work. I say likely because it is possible for there are edge cases where you do have code that it will work that your reader, your interpreter doesn't yet recognize. But if you do actually run it, it will work. So you don't fully know if something is going to fail until runtime, okay? Until you actually run your project and it either succeeds or fails. It's just likely that if you have something underlined in red or something doesn't look right, it's going to fail before runtime, okay? Although at runtime, you'll get errors like this. And that's one of the biggest failures with JavaScript is their error just they're it sucks. Reading through this, you don't fully understand what's going on unless you have like read errors for a little while. So the very first part is this is a type error. Okay, student.filter is not a function. Okay, so whatever students.filter is, it either doesn't even exist or it just is another type, like a string or something like that. Well, you can probably infer that students is an array, or you're trying to make students an array, or you want students to be an array because you're using this filter function or filter method, which is it exists on an array. So in all likelihood, students is not the type that you want it to be. It's not about filter, it's about students. So if you have this, where is the students? Student.gpa. Yeah, so your students is an object, which also arrays are objects, but that's beside the point. Um, they're just a class subset off of an object, basically. Because it's not an array, filter doesn't exist. So the type error isn't on filter really, it's on students. And so that gets into some really annoying things because like JavaScript doesn't infer that. You have to like think a little bit. And this is where Rust is really nice because they will give you Rust will give you really nice errors like, hey, by the way, like I think this is what you meant, but this is what you have. Make sure that you do this right. It's really kind to you. And then you have all this other crap on here, right? You've got so much crap. So to really read this, one, you don't have to. I'm 90% of the time you know your code well enough to go, okay, I know what the issue is. I just wrote this code. I know what students is. I know what I'm like that filter is. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, that's an object, not an array. Got it. But if you are looking at newer code, if you're looking at older code, or it's just really complex and like you have a bunch of nested stuff and it's all connected everywhere and it's doing all sorts of stuff, in all likelihood, you may want to like look through this. And this is what is called the call stack. Okay. So at home runner fearless new dev index.js, line 21, column 6, there is this error right here. Okay. So this is saying that right here, this is line 21, right? So it starts at 1 all the way down, line 21. And then right here, dot filter is going to have an error right here because filter is not, or maybe it's right here because filter would be undefined. So that would be column 26. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-ish. Yeah, I think it's right here. Maybe right here. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but basically that's the column. Generally, you don't really need to read the column part. It's the line because you can read students.filter. And let's look at this line. Let's find a students.filter. Oh, there it is. Yeah. This gets even worse when your code is like minified because everything is all on one line because JavaScript can run that way. Good for minimization and stuff, making it so your files are a lot smaller, but making it difficult to read functions or these call stacks. So you can see the most two important parts of this are the type filter or type error, and then the very first part. All the rest of it is basically fluff. It's what's happening in the back end in order to call that function. So this is what was originally called, which called this, 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 which called this in your code. And that part failed. Okay? This is where JavaScript call stacks just suck. And like it really just sucks. I hate that. So, how do you figure out the problem with your code? Well, you can get into wait, what's wrong with this? Oh, yeah, used a comma instead of a semicolon. Yeah, so there's your problem. Running this code, unexpected token. Like, is your actual error here, or is it somewhere else? Like, this is where JavaScript just sucks. It doesn't give you good errors. The actual error is that this is a comma, not a semicolon, but it's showing you that the error is here because commas are valid, but not actually. Yeah, so there are several issues. You can read through this. Yeah, you need to do some deeper digging oftentimes because your error isn't always where JavaScript is telling you the error is. Okay. So, best thing to do is just unexpected token, copy this, paste it into Google, and your first thing will likely be MDM Web Docs, Stack Overflow, or some other forum, but most likely it's Stack Overflow. Okay, and you can look at this unexpected token. This happens because you have received an HTML file and not some JavaScript object that it can't parse. Okay, so that's what probably yep, here it is. You must, yep. So this usually happens because it was an HTML that was returned instead of a JavaScript object notation object or JavaScript JSON string. Okay, so oftentimes the errors are just not helpful. But if you just copy and paste it, other people who have been programming for a long period of time probably have the same error and have the answers for you. Okay? So, just Google the error. Literally just copy and paste it into Google and you'll, like 9 times out of 10, you'll find the issue. Okay? And you can, this is basically the same thing. This is a not Codecademy. This is a oh my gosh, Stack Overflow answer, and people can see like, oh, that's supposed to be on the filter. Okay. Dot values uses the creates an array, which I can do, or I could just change this to be an array instead of using these 1, 2, 3, 4, which basically that is an array. Although they're starting at 1, which is gross. Okay. And then you try to implement, which is obvious. No duh, you're going to try to implement solution. Why would you look it up if you're not going to try to fix it? Repeat step. Okay, whatever. So this is where things can get complex. If you're 9 times out of 10 or even higher, the problem you have is already solved. However, there are edge cases that you are trying to solve a problem and the code out there, like no one else has had the issue. It's highly unlikely, but it's possible. So you can go onto Stack Overflow and ask the question yourself, and other people respond, and people respond very quickly. However, there is also the possibility that you're going to run into the XY problem, which I have a whole video on how to ask questions. And basically, you haven't learned enough about the subject in order to know what is the right question to ask. So in that instance, how do you know what is the right question to ask in order to get the information that you need? And basically, like, say you're in that situation, and basically the way to go about it is, instead of trying to ask for the how to solve your solution or how to accomplish your solution to a said problem, ask about the root problem yourself, or itself, instead of how to solve your path to get there, because there is probably a much shorter, much faster, easier path to accomplish said goal. So now, all of that said, there is a better way to do error handling in JavaScript, in my opinion, than Codecademy is showing, because the errors as types is absolutely fantastic, and I highly recommend you use. And it's really not hard to create. You can just look up, most likely, as types JavaScript code. Actually, let's do ChatGPT. Let's create a JavaScript file for handling errors as types, similar to Rust. Let's see what it comes up with. Wow, look at that. It's basically the same thing. Yeah. So it's exactly what I just said. It's basically the same thing. And now this will return an error or okay, and you just take the result is okay, then success is error here. And if you're using a good linter and like using TypeScript and stuff, it'll like force you before compile time and to handle this properly. Otherwise, it'll throw even more errors. So my recommendation is to do it this way, and I can create a file for you guys that does this for you. So, errors and how to read errors and thinking about errors, all of that stuff. This is a great thing to talk about. All right.